Okay, let me do this. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our beloved speaker, His Grace MEDHAVI Prabhu, our beloved uncle. And all glories to the assembled Vaishnavi devotees. Today is Friday, the 20th of February, 2026. We are a few days away from Sri Gaur Punim. So we pray and encourage devotees to be in the mood. But today is a very special day. We have one of our beloved uncles here with us. Of course, Prabhuji needs no introduction. He has been kind enough to be with us a couple of times. And he's here again with us today. So without further ado, Prabhuji, we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sadhu Prabhu. Thank you
Hare
very much.
Krishna.
Thank you very much again for hosting this very nice program of reviewing Srila Prabhupada's books. It's something that we've all been encouraged to do. We mentioned previously that whenever Srila Prabhupada traveled in the world, he was introduced to the devotees who did the best on the book distribution, that Sankirtan party, whether it was in Germany or Switzerland or France or America or wherever it was. They had a special darshan with Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada invariably asked them the same question. And he said, "But are you reading my books?" And in various places in France, the one time, the devotee replied, "Well, Srila Prabhupada, we do not have time." And Prabhupada said under his breath, another devotee was walking beside him, and he said, "Then what is the use? What is the use?" So at different times, Prabhupada said that he's written these books for us. And we're thinking that he made a joke the one time. He pretended to be the book distributor, and he gave the book to someone and said, the person said, "Well, what is it about?" And Prabhupada said, "I don't know. I'm just distributing them." So Prabhupada, he was critical. He was very critical of his devotees because he was spending hours and hours for years and years giving up his resting time to produce these books for his devotees. And they weren't taking advantage. Now they are hopefully more so. Younger devotees are taking advantage more of their courses for Bhakti Shastri and Bhakti Vaibhava and Bhakti Sadachar. So they focus on trying to study and understand Srila Prabhupada's books. So we're in a very interesting section of the Bhagavatam. We were discussing before that Jai and Vijay, who were very close servants of the Lord, the seventh gate, they were guards at the seventh gate of the spiritual world, evidently the highest place. And they had prevented the four Kumaras from entering into the Vaikuntha planets. So they were very disturbed, the Kumaras, and they cursed Jai and Vijay. So the verse on concern today is Lord Narayan speaking to the four Kumaras. So we'll read the Sanskrit. I'll leave a little section afterwards if anyone wants to respond. And then afterwards we'll do the word meanings. So it's an interesting meter. Ye me tanur dvijavaran duhatir madhya Bhutanya labda sharanani jabeda puja Drakshyantaga shatadrisho yahi manyavastan Ridharusha mama kushan Chadidandane tu. Any devotees like to speak? Okay.
Ye me tanu du javaran du hatil madia. Bhutani alapta sharanani chaveda budya. Drakshantya gakshata drishohi manya bastan. Gredra rishama makushantya didantanetuhu.
Ye me tanu tajafaram duhate madiya. Bhutana labda saranani chabeda udya. Draksyant agsyata driso I aimanaya swam. Gritra rusha maman kushanti adidanda anetu.
One more, if anyone likes. Okay. Thank you very much, Guru. Synonyms? Yea. Which persons may my tanu body Dvijavaran, the best of the Brahmanas, Duhati, cows, Madhya, relating to me, Bhutani, living entities, Alabda Sharanani, defenseless, Cha and Beda Buddha, considering as different, Drakshanti, see, Agha, by sin, Shata, is impaired, Trisha, whose faculty of judgment he, because he, like a snake, Manyava, angry, Tan, those same persons, Ridra, the vulture-like messengers, Rusha, angrily, Mama, my, Kushanti, tear, Abhidandane, true, of the superintendent of punishment, Yamaraj. All right, thank you. Translation. The Brahmins, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. Those whose faculty of judgment has been impaired by their own sin look upon these as distinct from me. They are just like furious serpents, and they are angrily torn apart by the bills of the vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj, the superintendent of sinful persons. Please repeat. The Brahmins, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. Those whose faculty of judgment has been impaired by their own sin look upon these as distinct from me. They are just like furious serpents, and they are angrily torn apart by the bills of the vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj, the superintendent of sinful persons. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The defenseless creatures, according to Brahma Samhita, are the cows, Brahmins, women, children, and old men. Of these five, the Brahmanas and cows are especially mentioned in this verse because the Lord is always anxious about the benefit of the Brahmins and the cows and is prayed to in this way. So we know, Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha, Jagadachaya Krishna, Govindaya Namo Namaha. So one of the most famous of all mantras is glorifying the Lord as the protector of the Brahmanas and the cows. The Lord especially instructs, therefore, that no one should be envious of these five, especially the cows and Brahmins. In some of the Bhagavatam readings, the word duhitri is duhati. In either case, the meaning is the same. Duhati means cow, and duhitra can also be used cow to mean cow, because cow is supposed to be the daughter of the sun god. Just as children are taken care of by their parents, women as a class should be taken care of by the father, the husband, or grown-up son. Those who are helpless must be taken care of by their respective guardians. Otherwise, the guardians will be subjected to the punishment of Yamaraj, who is appointed by the Lord to supervise the activities of sinful living creatures. The assistants or messengers of Yamaraj are likened here to vultures, and those who do not execute the respective duties in protecting their wards are compared to serpents. Vultures deal very seriously with serpents, and similarly, the messengers will deal very seriously with neglectful guardians.
Wow.
Translation: the Brahmins, the cows, and the defenseless creatures on my own body. Those whose faculty of judgment has been impaired by their own sin look upon these as distinct from me. They are just like furious serpents, and they are angrily torn apart by the bills of the vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj, the superintendent of sinful persons. So I neglected to offer our respects. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Robert gives the presentation of the defenseless creatures: the cow, the Brahmins, the cows, the Brahmanas, women, children, and old men. So he begins with cows. So it's interesting. We thought we might just mention we were in Ireland in 1979, and it was the year that the Pope visited Ireland. And so he was flying in on the plane from Italy, and of course, they wanted to give some information about the Pope. So they said what his favorite breakfast was. His favorite breakfast, it was veal. Veal is baby lambs who have been raised in darkness. They haven't even been able to see the sun. So this was one of his favorite dietary requirements. So it kind of gives a real astonishing difference between what is real spiritual culture. One will not want to harm any living creature, and especially the cows. Whenever Srila Prabhupada was challenged by a Christian, he always presented that we accept Jesus Christ as our guru, and he always emphasized that a follower of Jesus should follow his commandments. Thou shalt not kill. So he would say, why are you killing? So even if you try to find a Bible these days, or an Old Testament, you won't find thou shalt not kill. It's not in the Bible. The recent Bibles, now it's thou shalt not murder. So instead of following the instruction, then they just change the instruction. That's a lot more convenient. And they keep their members. They don't become vegetarians. That's last course. You would think that if they recognize the instruction, then they would try to follow it. But they didn't. They just dissolved the instruction and changed it into something more easy. So that is what has happened in South Africa as well. After the change of government and the rise of HIV, we mentioned previously, instead of encouraging in the schools and on the news and in the televisions, celibacy and simplicity, what did they do? They just they placed condoms everywhere. Everywhere. Anyone could get a condom for performing illicit activities. So the Brahmins, the real saintly persons, women, so women, there's so many, every year in South Africa, there's a month or 16 days of action against gender violence. So many places now it's getting to be another fad where women are shown to be superior to men in the military, in fighting, flying airplanes and all these things, to show that women are more than what men will allow them to be. So it's a patriarchal chauvinism that's there, unfortunately. And children, of course, we have in ISKCON our problems with raising and protecting children, but the main atrocity against children is abortions. So there used to be abortions allowed only after rape. In India, it used to be that if a girl was raped, she had to marry the boy that raped her. She had to marry them. And then some years ago, one lady stood up to it and refused. And her family was against her because, it brought shame on her family and all this stuff. But she became famous as a hero because she wouldn't marry the person who raped her. In South Africa, there's 135,000 reported rapes every year, but there's more like 200 to 260,000 because most of them are illegal, unsafe, or undocumented. So many abortions, so many children killed. We think that the what do we say? The length of life is increasing. People used to live 50, 60, now they live 70, 80. But if you factor in the hundreds of thousands and it's understood, anyway, hundreds of thousands, millions of abortions, then the life expectancy drops very low, very low. And then what to say, helpless creatures, the old men. We have personal experience. I'm 75, and we get calls at least 3 times a day from cell phone companies trying to offer me some deal, from some people telling me that there's a problem with my credit card, that somebody's hacking my card, and they'll be saying that someone is hacking my card when they're the people that are hacking the card. They can even give me everything, and then they say the people hacked your telephone number because they know that the fraud claim will come into that number. So they've hacked your number, but it's actually them who are the crooks. And they're always attacking old people, old men and old women. I've had it done like 3 times. I've had to cancel my credit card because these people are always trying to rob you of your hard-earned savings. So those people are out there. They're targeting old people because why? Because old people are generally trusting. They were raised that way. When you're raised in the 40s and 50s, and when people said something, you believed them. There's a famous movie, it's called The Invention of Lying. And it actually goes to tell society before anyone ever lied. And then this one guy told a lie, and everyone believed him. So he saw how successful lying was. So he had the invention of lying. But that's not the way it was. A man's word was his bond. So Prabhupada was always after Christians that thou shalt not kill. When Prabhupada arrived in London in 1977, he landed and he saw the devotees and he admired the devotees. They were so neatly dressed, bright-faced. And then he mentioned the attack. Mayapur had been attacked by gundas, thugs in Mayapur. And they had said, they were looking, where's the old man? Where's the old man? They wanted to catch Prabhupada, actually. Where's the old man? When he arrived in London, he praised that everything was neat and well run. Why do they have to eat the cow? Can't they eat some other animal instead? So if they would eat something else even, then they would be free from a majority, because we know in the various Samhitas it's explained that one who participates in the killing of a cow, either by ordering the cow to be killed, by arranging its killing, by killing it, by transporting it, by presenting it, by cooking it, and by eating it. All of them are involved. They're all cronies in the crime. And what is the punishment? That they have to be born as a cow. For each hair, sometimes it says 1,000 births for each hair on the body of that cow. So we know that wars, traffic accidents, various disasters are the karma for animal slaughter. But big meat-eating nations, America, Brazil, Ireland, they call it the Emerald Isle because it rains a lot there. But there's no business there. The only business is cow slaughter. I used to travel in Ireland, and we stayed in the back of a van, and we just would drive off the road into some field and sleep the night, and then we'd take our baths out of buckets, and then we'd drive to our next town. But the only traffic you heard all day long was big double-articulated lorries bringing fertilizer and animal food. That was it. That was it. And you saw some of the farmers, of course, not the dairy farmers, but the other farmers, and their faces were so ashen. There was no effulgence at all. Their faces were completely dull and dark, even though they were young people. But you could see that they were victims, or they were perpetrators of the greatest sin. So children is mentioned. And what to say about animals? It used to be that you could abort the child in their first trimester before 13 weeks. But now it's abortion on demand, anytime. So it's disgusting, really. It says, it's mentioning that, what was it saying? In South Africa, or in the world in general, 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies. Unintended pregnancies. It's a useless statement. Unintended. How can you unintend to not create a child when you perform conception? They're too lazy. to even go and get some kind of contraception even. We were mentioning, and it was confirmed. We went to class. We had a visitor from Victoria. And he was saying, because I mentioned one devotee, we had a farm up there. And he was mentioning in the course of talking somehow that the girls will have sex with you for a 2-liter soft drink. A 2-liter soft drink. So what's happened? So 6 out of 10 unintended pregnancies end in abortion. More than half of in South and Central, excuse me, it said that, yeah, 45% in South Africa. So the old men, generally speaking, they wasted their time with meat eating, cigarettes, and alcohol, and they hardly have any intelligence to understand anything about spiritual culture. So we visited Russia the one time for the South Russia Summer Festival, and we saw that Krishna consciousness, after it appeared in Russia, the whole family would join Krishna consciousness. There were the children, there were the parents, there were the grandparents. They were all joining because they had not been spoiled by consumerism. They were hardworking, simple people. And when the simple truth came, they accepted it. Even now you go to Russia, and there's so many old people that are strictly following Krishna consciousness because they haven't been spoiled by the consumerism of the West. So Prabhupada stated that modern civilization will collapse. And this was, of course, in 2008. There was a great financial collapse around the world. And if you study it, read up on it, there's actually an interesting documentary. It's called The Big Short. And it shows how the big people, the governor of the Reserve Bank of America, you think the Reserve Bank is a government, it's not. It's a private company. You think that Standard & Poor's or Moody's are government organizations, but they're not. They're private companies, and they're just suggesting. They're just suggesting different countries' reliability. So 8 million Americans lost their jobs. 6 million lost their houses. Even now you go to America and you still see people living in their cars, people living out of tents. And these were people that had their own homes with 2-color TVs and the fridge and the microwave and the washing machine and the dryer and everything. So this Mr. Paulson, the governor of the U.S. Reserve Bank, he was at the root. He allowed all this cheating to go on. Because everyone knows it's cheating. But when they get too greedy, then they can't even maintain the cheating. So he became, even though he was the main crook, he was responsible for the collapse, basically, because he was in charge of the Reserve Bank. They made him dean of the Harvard Business School. And Goldman and Sachs and other such insurance companies, they swallowed up the $3 trillion that the government had set out to bail out the financial industry. So it's going to happen again. Prabhupada said, people will flock to our farms by the hundreds. But where are the farms? Where are the farms? So Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram. It's understood that when he came to London in 1977, he wanted to go on to America to establish Varnashram. So he was in there was a memory by Can't remember the devotee's name now. It's not Narendra, it's something else. So he was Prabhupada's nurse for the last days. So Prabhupada mentioned he wanted to, that he had only fulfilled 50% of his mission. And one devotee said, because you haven't finished the Bible? He says, no. He says, I haven't established varnashram. So this devotee asked, not Arjuna, thank you. How was Prabhupada going to establish varnashram dharma? And Prabhupada said in one short sentence, I want to teach my disciples how to live off the land. How to live off the land. Now it immediately puts the ball back on our court. How many of us are willing? We were reading about the founding of Juhu and in Brahmananda's book, Swamiji. And he was saying how nobody wanted to live on that land. Prabhupada bought the land. He established the deities. And then they had tents. Half the land was a swamp. It was full of mosquitoes, rats, and snakes. And the other half had a couple of apartment buildings that were full. And Prabhupada wanted the devotees to live there because in India and everywhere else, possession is 90%. Possession is 90% of the law. So if you're living there, then you own it. So the people, and it's mentioned there that 10 other people had bought that property from Mr. Nair. And he had fooled them all because nobody was going to live there. But Prabhupada told his disciples, go and live there. So they were living there in tents in a swamp with mosquitoes, snakes, and rats. So would be willing to, even when Prabhupada established New Vrindavan, they took a car, but they had to walk the last 2 miles. They had to walk the last 2 miles. There was no electricity. There was no running water. And that's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted a isolated community away from all the modern so-called conveniences. We have people like the Amish and the Mennonites. They have farms, they have schools like that, and they protect their culture. Well, our problem here is not just we don't want to live without toilets, flushing water, running water, and electricity, fridges, and air conditioning. Parents want their children to keep abreast of the latest knowledge, finance and technology, IT, AI. They don't want their children to be brahmacharis and sannyasis. They want them to be material successful, a little bit, Krishna, just a little bit. So this is our problem. So we have so many experiences about here in Cape Town. Even there was a ship that was traveling from Brazil to Saudi Arabia. It was full of cows, cattle. So they don't make a distinction between a female cattle or a male cattle. We generally call them bulls or cows, but they just call them cattle. They were all locked up in this ship. Now it's a 2-3 week boat ride, and the cow weren't cared for. There was no treatment. They were cramped up in the ship's cargo hold. They weren't really fed or cared for properly, and many of them died. Their stool and urine was all over the place. Dead animals were there, and the ship docked in Cape Town. Now, when they opened the hold, the stench was so bad that all the people working in the offices in the town center had to go home. The stench was so horrible that the business managers had to let everybody go home because the smell was toxic. It was so horrible. But the people in Saudi Arabia, they have to have fresh meat to slaughter. So they sent, but they've evidently passed some kind of laws in the books where they'll stop allowing those ships to board and stop in South Africa. Anyway, they must have live meat to slaughter. So it's completely crazy. So, yeah. So I had a question. Sorry. Where are we at? Yeah. So we have the problem with the schools. We have the problems with treating other creatures. There's a question of pest control. But Prabhupada said, where there's real cleanliness, there'll not be rats and cockroaches and ants and everything. Prabhupada's father, we know, the Gaur Mahan Day, he ran a cloth shop. But every evening before he went home, he'd put a bowl of rice in the middle of the floor so that the rats had something to eat and they wouldn't tear up his cloth. So it was a little token, but what did it accomplish? It accomplished that the rats in his shop, they did not destroy his cloth. So we have so many problems and we were reading about Ravindra Sarup, one of his memories, and he was speaking to Srila Prabhupada, and actually it was the time that I joined in 1970, late 73, early 74. And I joined Rupanuga Prabhu's party. And Rupanuga and Ravindra Sarup had organized the In God We Trust political party. Or In God We Trust political party for purified leaders. So Ravindra Sarup was there with Srila Prabhupada, and he could understand the way Prabhupada was speaking, that he's thinking that devotees you see a time when devotees will be ruling countries and commanding armies. You see a time, he said, Prabhupada, you see a time when devotees will be ruling countries and commanding armies. And Prabhupada said, yes. And Ravindra said, but how can we prepare ourselves to that? How can we prepare ourselves not to be corrupted by power, to be tempted by so many material attractions? Prabhupada said, 16 rounds and 4 regulative principles. And Ravindra Sarup asked him, and that will be enough? Prabhupada said, that's enough. So it's a very big thing. So I wanted to ask, seeing as unless anyone else has a question, I wanted to ask if you were part of a government, a Krishna conscious government, or of a government, somehow or other you got elected, how would you stop cow killing? Can I throw that out, Sadeh Prabhu? Or should we just
Yes.
think about it?
So, dear devotees, whoever would like to attempt to answer this big question, please, you may unmute and go ahead and try to answer. how would you attempt to stop cow killing if you are the new president of your country? Hare Krishna. Well, Prabhuji, I would say I had thought of this long time ago, of me, Rascal Sahadev, being elected as the president of my country, whichever country that might be. And how am I going to? I wasn't even thinking of just cow killing, but I was thinking of the poor regulative principles. But, well, now you're saying cow killing. And I never was able to come up with the appropriate approach to doing that, other than trying to encourage all the citizenry to have interest in practicing devotional service. If people try to develop interest in devotional service, if they have the love for devotional service, then it might be easier for people to follow the regulative principles. But Shivara Prabhu has his hand up, so we may go to him, and then maybe you take his together with my contribution. And I don't know if any other devotee also may have other things to share. Shivara Prabhu, please, you may unmute, and we'll go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandava Pranam Prabhuji, this is some humble business. Okay, so if I had the power to administrate the country, I would discourage cow killing by making cow very, very expensive. I'll make it so expensive that it will be useless to even want to buy it. I think that would discourage many people.
Right? How would
Put
you
a high
do that?
price on. By legislation, cow price will be 10 times or 100 times what it costs today.
But you'd have to give a reason.
Yes, because we will make the derivatory from cow's products, milk very cheap. Butter becomes very cheap. Ghee becomes very cheap, as long as you don't kill the cow. But if you want to buy the cow, you want to kill it, then the price will be 100 times. But all the products of cow will be very, very, very cheap.
Well,
Yes,
you're
that's
making
my
it
style.
cheap, but then you want to make it expensive. So anyway, the meat industry is huge and it's very powerful. It's never been challenged before.
Yeah.
So we have no idea how powerful it is. British beef is best. Beef is best. That's a whole motto in most of the countries in the world. That whenever the beef production is going down, the beef sales are going down, then they start advertising. So it, because there are other types of meat. As Prabhupada was saying, can't they eat some other kind of meat? But how do we wean them off of beef? Wean them off of beef. One devotee also was saying, you really can't talk about dairy without talking about slaughtering. Because when the cow gets old and it's not producing milk, then they just send it to the abattoir. When I was just joining, actually, back in 73, there was a newspaper article in Australia. And these two persons, they were wannabe devotees, evidently, and they wanted to blow up this abattoir. Unfortunately, they ended up blowing themselves up. But, we do have people that are militant animal rights activists. But There has to be, if we had a person in the position, and generally speaking, we'd have to work it out in such a way that other forms of meat would become more desirable. Sheep, chickens, of course, chickens are already on top.
Well, probably there is one hand raised. I guess
Yeah.
wants to give
Okay.
a contribution. Salika, probably you may unmute.
Okay,
Let's
thank
hear
you
what
very
you
much.
got. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Can
Thank
you
very much,
focus
Sadi
him so
Prabhu.
we can
Thank
see?
you,
Yeah.
MEDHAVI Prabhu, for this beautiful introspective question. And actually, I was also thinking of something while you were thinking, but maybe I'll take that after. Let me answer this question in my own thinking. I think if I have the position of a president of a country that is in a modern times, the first primary thing is that I'll try not to frame it as a religious principle, because that will be the first area where people will try to criticize, like making it a state religion kind of stuff. And because in this era, most often times the governments are democratic government. So I will not try to go from the religious point of framing in the first place. The world is suffering largely. There is a lot huge of investment in climate change and nature in recent times. So my first approach will be to legislate something that will the ethnic, culture, economic, and sustainability nature of not killing cow. I will try to go from that perspective and then promote some policies that will encourage the protections of cow as a way of solving ecological, climate, social ecology problems. I would go from that perspective so that it can receive a welcome deliberation. And from that point on, when people start giving the listening ear, then I will be able to introduce education, because actually the main challenge to cow killing and eating of cow meat is as a result of ignorance. And when people are educated enough to know, not coming basically from just religious perspective, but from the spiritual, economic, cultural base, they will start thinking differently. So I will use the subject that is already attractive to the public space, like climate change, to bring in education for the sustainability economic basis of cow, not killing cow. And then maybe from there on, after setting up a legal framework, and then I'll start providing within the legal framework economic alternatives, the agricultural reform programs that will encourage engaging cows and bulls in the natural way in which they were supposed to be, using historical and ancient cultural knowledge, and then create a large awareness of education of people, engaging the community and the international diplomacy, especially what has been attractive to the public in the area of, because the world knows that one of the greatest challenges the world is facing now is climate change, and that has a lot to do with cow killing. So these are the ways I will approach it, and I can break it down into more expansive way, but I will approach it in this manner.
Thanks.
Shri MEDHAVI Prabhu, one quick question for Salika Prabhu, what we just spoke. Why singling out cows and not any other animal? That would be my first question.
Well, the cow is the most horrible animal to kill. It's the most beneficial animal because it provides the milk that provides the brain to understand spiritual life. And therefore, it's a great slap in the face of Krishna, who's provided this wonderful creature to provide the wonderful miracle, Prabhupada called, the miracle substance called milk. And then human society is killing it and eating it. So that's the greatest offense. That's the greatest ignorance and the greatest stupidity. So Prabhupada mentioned that people who eat meat cannot understand anything about God. So, and that's there in the Bible as well. That right at the end in Revelations, and it's there, I think, that the person is being sent to hell. And he said, God says, you did not clothe me when I was naked. You did not feed me when I was hungry. You did not protect me when, this and that. And saying, Lord, 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 when did I do that? I never did that. And then Jesus says, or God says, whenever you did that to the least of my creatures, that you did it unto me. So go to hell. So that's actually there in the Bible, but nobody wants to remember it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And we know that St. John was he ate honey and St. John's bread. St. John's bread is carob. So that he can tell the difference between good and evil. So it's there in the Bible. It's everywhere, and the places where it's not has been taken out. But how will we do that? And there needs to be some. I mean, if we're talking about running countries, and the main thing that's causing destruction and war isn't, war is good business. It's good business. When Trump and Netanyahu will meet, if they haven't met already, what are they be talking about? They'll be talking about F-35s, maintenance systems. They'll be talking about anti-aircraft systems, how you can buy more military hardware so that my military industrial complex will be satisfied. They won't be talking about peace. They don't care about the Palestinians. They just are trying to grab as much money for themselves as they can. So it's a joke. It's a horrible, the most unfunny joke when these so-called leaders come together to talk about peace. When they're not talking about peace, they're just talking about making more off the war. Making more off the war. War is good business. So I'm part of a interfaith group that is claiming that war is mostly caused by conflict between religion. And, there is some truth to that, but it's not the main cause. The main cause is greed. Greed. We had a little card through away. But there was this one economics professor, and he was explaining what are the conditions for war. And he was saying, one of the things he said was for material gain, resources like Putin's doing for Ukraine, and even if you've got a bigger army than next door, then you just walk in. You just take advantage of the opportunity. It's it's like opportunistic like that. And he gave some other reasons, revenge, things like that. So I don't have the card in front of me, unfortunately. But there are different reasons why people have wars. And most of it can be solved by dialogue between intelligent people. Intelligent people means they're not hankering for their own benefits out of this peace treaty. Just like Cape Town almost became the first city in the world to become without water. They called it Day Zero. So there'd been very light rain for about 3 years, and the government hadn't halted the agricultural use of water, and the dams were drying up, and we weren't getting any rain. So then the government decided that they'll set up salinization plants on the ocean where they filter the water of all the salt, and then it will make drinking. So that sat on the back burner for years. Why? Because the politicians couldn't decide on which company they would go to in order to get the biggest kickback for themselves. They couldn't decide. This politician wanted that company, that politician wanted that company, and they couldn't agree. It wasn't for the benefit of the people, it was just them trying to get the most money for themselves. So luckily, the rains finally came, but we're getting ready for another one now. So it's the same situation, political people, the rogues and demons that are talked about in the first chapter of the 10th canto, that the earth is being disturbed by the unnecessary military force of rogues and demons. So that's the fact. Our only weapon is the holy name. But the more we develop our faith, the more we develop individually our own purity of chanting, then the more our lives will change and the lives of the world will change too. Prabhupada said 2 or 3%. Doesn't have to be 25%, 30, 45%. So just 2 or 3% of the population, then the whole thing will change. It will change. You just push it over. So we have to chant sincerely. We have to follow Prabhupada's instructions carefully. And we have to see that the teachings of the Vedas are the only way to get out of this hell that is coming like a handbasket.
Well, Prabhu, it's very interesting. There is one devotee who shared in the chat room, and he seems to have gotten everything right per your delivery of how do we as individuals, if we became president of a country, how do we go about ending the cow slaughtering? And he says, this is from Anadi Nidanam Prabhu. He says he will first of all introduce Harinam Sankirtan. And then secondly, he says, once the citizenry become conscious of themselves, they would be compassionate towards the cows. And he also gives a third contribution, which I feel is not strong enough, but he says from health implications, that is the transfer of diseases from animals to men. So those are his contributions.
That's there in the Higher Taste, the small book there. It mentions, amongst other things, that the people are using all the antibiotics to cure, not to cure, but to disguise the diseases that are in the animals. And the people that are inspecting, the government inspectors, they're being harassed by the cow killers that you have to let this go. If there's eye diseases or this abscess or that infection, they will just cut it out and then pass it. But all the diseases is throughout the system of the animal. And because the inspectors are being pushed or bribed or both, then they'll let this meat go through. And therefore, the antibiotics that they're using on the animals will no longer work to cure people. And that's one of the big problems. They have to keep developing more and more antibiotics because they're using all the previous ones, the amoxicillins and this and that, to treat animals. They're actually putting it in their feed. So they don't care. They just want the bottom dollar. The bottom dollar. They don't care. And then people that just like to kill, then they're working in the avatar. So they can inflict their horrible pain upon poor animals. But next life, they'll be the animal. So it's interesting. It will take a very intelligent, most probably to increase the use of sheep and chickens and other animals, and some or other keeping the cows of it, female cows, out of the slaughterhouses. There's so much. Yeah.
I'm thinking of something beautiful. Just yesterday, a co-worker of mine came to work with lots of cakes. And what were they for? Because she was celebrating the birthday of her puppy.
Her puppy.
Yes.
Her dog. Okay.
Yes. And I've been thinking, if this lady has so much love for her dog and has even made a whole lot of cookies for the dog's birthday and going to share with fellow co-workers, how can anyone imagine that she would kill that dog to eat its flesh? And so if everybody could have that same much affection for the cow, who is also a friend to the humans, just like the dogs are to humans. The cow is giving us its milk, it's giving us butter, it's giving us so much wonderful things. If we only can understand how important the cow is to us as humans, then it may be a little difficult for people, and at least people who are aware will condemn the killing of the cows. But it seems this loving relationship between humans and cows are not there as much as humans do have with dogs. I think that is one of the problems. And if there is a way, I believe anyone can help humanity to develop this loving relationship. I think that might help with ending the killing of these beautiful creatures, cows.
Yeah. Well, there's what I think is Gujarat. They've outlawed cow killing. But you have to start in small places, I think, because again, in America, there's all these companies, the pharmaceutical company, big pharma, they have lobbies. They pay people to pay congressmen and senators to vote their way for the use of pharmaceuticals. Interesting that a nice devotee was running for the presidency of the United States. You may know Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
She had a talk with Giriraj Swami some years ago, and she was backing a legalization of marijuana. So different devotees were saying, no, she's a demon. She just wants to legalize intoxication. But she explained to Giriraj Swami that so many fighters were returning. Military personnel were returning from the Middle East, and they had seen such horrible atrocities that they couldn't get back into normal material life. So the pharmaceutical companies were presenting these what do they call it? Things from heroin. These medication that was made from opiates. So they were claiming that they don't have any, they're not addictive, but they were. But they were advertising that they weren't. They were just lying through their teeth. And then they had sales meetings that were like coaches trying to get their team going. How many thousands of dollars of their product had they sold in their area, even though it was a complete lie. So what happens was there was an epidemic of suicides among returned American soldiers. They were taking this thing, but it messed up their brains and they killed themselves. So she was explaining that just marijuana, which is simple and it's not dangerous in most ways, that if we legalize that, then people could, and it's legal for medical uses in South Africa even now. But that's why she was saying that would cut off the great supplies of money that these pharmaceutical companies were making by presenting these lies about opiates. Those are what different devotees were saying, no, she's into intoxications and all that. So it really has to be looked at carefully. Now, the meat lobby, it's there. We don't see it so much because they basically ruled the roost. It's a bad example. But one has to expect that as soon as you start making some kind of motion to cut down their sales, that they'll be the first people to try to counteract. They'll get some doctors to release some reports that meat is good for you, you need meat, that milk is bad for you or something. You can't live without beef, like that. So they've been using that for years. But anyway, it's understood that it'll take some extremely intelligent people to try to change that outside of just having a World War III. So yeah.
Well, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I guess devotees, if anyone may have questions other than this particular topic, but the overall discussion for the day, please you may do so by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to go ahead to ask your question. I was a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard, but unfortunately, she's become very disappointing to me.
And I feel the same way.
Yes, and I believe she's not helping others to feel that Vaishnavas can get into politics and
not be affected.
No, not be affected. Yes, exactly. I would suggest that instead of like Giriraj Maharaj Swami, I believe correctly, was advising her, instead of supporting this medical marijuana, which is there, nobody can deny that. Why doesn't she try to fight about the cause of this PTSD to these soldiers? If there were no wars, and these soldiers did not go to the wars to encounter all these atrocities, then this post-traumatic stress will not be there in the first place. So I think that should be the first thing. And that is why in the ancient ruling of every kingdom, when the king advocates for war, he will be the first person leading the war. But in today's world, these heads of state, they wage war and they relax in their armchairs enjoying while others are dying on the field. So that is the problem. But I have a question about those who kill the cows. They have to live as cows as many times as the hair on the body of the cow. Now, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, I think Canto 5, and I have it here. I'll put it up here. Canto 5, chapter 14, text number 30. This is a very long meter. I don't know how this will be read when we get there, how it will be recited. But it's a very interesting verse here, where in the very opening purport, Srila Prabhupada says that by fulfilling the process of evolution from the aquatics to the animal platform, a living entity eventually reaches the human form. The three modes of material nature are always working in the evolutionary process. Those who come to the human form through the quality of Sattva Gun were cows in their last animal incarnation. Those who come to the human form through the quality of Rajagun were lions in their last animal incarnation. And those who come to the human form through the quality of Tamagun were monkeys in their last animal incarnation. Now, the reason I'm asking this question is I was under the impression that the very moment a soul is promoted to the body of a cow, then its next life will be a human body. But it seems that is not the case, if you may shed some light, because if the soul has to live many forms as cow, as many as the hair of the body, how do we understand that in contrast to what we just read? Prabhuji.
Well, there's a few things to consider. The main point is trying to emphasize how great a sin it is and what the consequences are. People in the mode of ignorance, they perform activities, but they don't consider what is the consequence. So how it all happens, I'm not exactly sure. There may be some discussion about this somewhere in the Vedic literatures. It's just you have to find it. But from one point of view, it's just to emphasize how dangerous the activity of abusing, killing cows is for one's material development, what to say, spiritual. So, yeah. So, I mean, even when the person, a living entity, goes to hell, just like he's been, what is it? He's been engaged in taking alcohol. Then he's forced to drink molten metal. So he's in the subtle body. So that if you drank molten metal, you'll die. You'll die in 2 seconds. But in the subtle body, you can experience it for longer than the gross body can. So that experience keeps on happening. And you keep on getting that suffering in the subtle body. So the slaughtering, the killing of the cow, you're the cow now, and the killing to realize that these people are going to kill me. And then there's no way out. They shoot you in the head with the bolt pistol. You're knocked out. You're not unconscious, but you're pulled up and your throat is slit and all this other horrible things you have to continue going through forever and ever. So maybe that's the way it works out. But I think the main thing is that it's trying to emphasize the danger of performing that activity. So it's just too horrible to even imagine being slaughtered as many times as hairs on the back of the cow. That's impossible to conceive. It's inconceivable. So let's say that is somewhere we don't want to go. So I would think that would be sufficient. As far as the details of how it's happening, there's that interesting picture in the Back to Godhead. It shows the cow tied up to a stake in the ground, and the cow's head is a man's head, and the man standing over the cow with the axe has a cow's head. It's a very interesting presentation. So, yeah. But it's simply to try to show how it's such a horrible activity. We have no concept of how beneficial the cow is. There's so many other things about the cow. You can read up on it in the Vedic literature. It says that there's a vein or an artery that goes down the cow's back on its spine. And that vein is nourished by the sun. And the sun produces with that, it produces some wonderful effects through the milk. So you can read up about it. There's so many wonderful things about the cow and its existence. And it's a wonderful gift from Krishna, but people are foolishly and stupidly killing it for the enjoyment of their tongues. If they knew the consequences, then perhaps they would abstain. So yeah, it's the question. But I think we can only go so far as to understand that it's definitely something that we shouldn't become involved in. And even though we've been eating, in America, you eat meat 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. But yeah, and then there's so much sinful reaction. So we're wondering, we've chanting for a few years, and we're thinking, well, why haven't I achieved love of God? Well, we've been around for a few billion births.
Yeah.
So even though the holy name is so powerful, we still have to see in the prayers to Lord Jagannath, it says that please remove the mountain of sin. So here in Cape Town, we're very fortunate. We've got a mountain right in the middle of town. We've got a mountain right in the middle of town. So mountains are pretty substantial.
Yeah.
We talk about. So we've got a mountain of sin. And we have to, the holy name is merciful, but still we have to show our undeviated appreciation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll do the same stupid things.
Prabhu, we have one hand up. Shivara Acharya Prabhu, please give me on mute.
Jai Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you once again, Prabhu. I think Prabhu has already given the essential point about why, the killer of cows dying as many times as the hair on their body. But then your question, if I can make some contribution, the point you've just raised and the purport you read is talking about evolution from the lower species to the higher species. It's not talking about devolution. So when a man becomes a cow because of sinful activity, that is devolution, it's not evolution. So that is not the natural process. The natural process that Srimad Bhagavatam describes is the upward evolutionary process from the lower species to the higher species. So I think that is the difference. So just a little contribution. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a very nice point.
Yeah. Okay.
The
I
person's
understand
going
it now.
down
Yes.
because he stays in that down for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but it's, yeah, that's, once he gets there, then he has to experience. Nice point. Thanks for.
Govinda Prabhu, you have something to ask? Please hear me on mute. Govinda Prabhu is our modern day Garuda. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. My respectful obeisances to you. Obeisances to the Vaishnavas. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I have a question and also kind of comment. The first question will be the difference between the one killing human being and the one killing a cow. In terms of the gravitation of sin or the reactions, where do you put human and cows for those who kill these two entities?
Well, again, the whole idea is to show how beneficial the cow is and how destroying it and killing it is so, the consequences are so heavy. Now, generally speaking, if you kill someone, then, of course, in the Vedic culture, you would be killed. And that being killed by the government would purify you of your sin. And therefore, it's the government's kindness to kill a murderer. We had an interesting experience here in Cape Town. There was this nice young girl. She was in her first year at University of Cape Town. Her mother was the Minister of Education for the Eastern Cape. Cape Town is in the Western Cape. And this girl's mother was the minister. She was going to school, and the mother had sent some parcels, some care package, we would call it, to the daughter. She went to the post office to collect it, but the guy that was behind the counter said that he was too busy, she could come back after hours. So she was an unsuspecting girl. She came back, but it turned out that this guy wanted to rape her. And he started grabbing her, and she fought him off. But then he grabbed a scale, one of these heavy scales, and he crushed her skull. And then he tried to burn her body. Now, the horrible thing about it was that he had already killed somebody else. He had already killed somebody else some years before, and the government was still deciding on punishment, or he got something let off. And now he's killed another person, a very sweet young lady. So if he had been killed for his previous murder, then that girl would still be alive. So it's important for the government, of course, South Africa, on both sides of the chain before Mr. Mandela was freed, both sides, the political government and the other ANC members, they were perpetrators of so many violent activities against others. So they abolished the death penalty so that these guys couldn't be, their good buddies could not be prosecuted or executed. But that's a long way down the road now. So they should reestablish so that people who have done things wrong, they're gone. They can't remain to commit more because people get disturbed when people commit crimes and they get away with it. What does it say? It says, well, I can get away with it too. So people aren't encouraged. Of course, there's a whole discussion about capital punishment. But one of the things that people expect that a person will be punished. And if they don't witness the punishment, then they are dissatisfied with the government. So that's another point. I don't know if that kind of helps the question.
Governor Prabhu, are you satisfied with the answer? And well, thank you for the question, Governor Prabhu. Prabhu, in fact, I am very grateful, of course, for the entire Qatar, and also particularly how you so beautifully made lots of references to the Bible and other religions. Unfortunately, there are a few times where we come across some Vaishnava devotees who, excuse me to say, look down on other religions, which, according to my minute understanding of Srila Prabhupada's teachings and Srila Prabhupada himself never condemned any religion. He never condemned any scripture. He only encouraged devotees and people in general that whatever you have, you can also learn from us. And undoubtedly, we have lots of superior information coming from the Supreme Lord. But I don't think that should make us feel that others are nothing or useless. Because I cannot look down on my kindergarten teacher. If my kindergarten teacher or day nursery teacher didn't prepare me, I wouldn't be able to be sitting here speaking English, which is not my first language. And so talking about the importance of the cow and specifically this text we treated today, how Krishna is saying it, that all these other creatures that are powerless, the people who are powerful should give them protection. A similar thing is also said in the Bible. And I would like to share that briefly. Let me see here. Yeah, sorry. In the Old Testament, in the book of Ecclesiastes, which was written by Solomon, the son of David, in chapter 3, text 18. Let me go back here. Where is it? Oh, I went past. 3:18. Okay. No, this is 4. Sorry. 3. 11. Yep, 11. But I'll look for it, but I'll read it. It says that the soul of animals, I'm not sure. Oh, I think I went past it. That's why I'm not seeing it. Sorry. I was looking at wrong place. 3:18, because I just read it. Ecclesiastes 1, Ecclesiastes 2, Ecclesiastes 3. Okay, here. I said in my heart concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them, that they may see that they themselves are like animals. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them. As one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and all return to the dust. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men, which goes upward, and the spirit of animal, which goes down to the earth? So here, Ecclesiastes, Solomon is telling us that the breath of life, what makes me a man, what makes the animal an animal, is the same, that man has no advantage over the animals. So even in the Bible, the importance of seeing all living entities as part and parcels of the Lord is there. And again in Isaiah 66, verse 3 specifically states that those who kill cows are like those who break in the neck of humans. So if we can remind people, especially those who call themselves religionists, religious people, of what their scriptures say about animal slaughtering, maybe that might help. But if we are in a position where we are not even accepting that the scriptures of these different religions are also coming from the Lord, then how do we even try to tell them whatever from their own scriptures? Because like Salika Prabhu was saying, when we start addressing people on the basis of religion, most people wouldn't like to accept what other religious faiths are telling them to do. But if they see from their own end what their religion is telling them to do, it's easier for them to do it. That is my humblest contribution. Unfortunately, it's been longer than I expected. And thank you for allowing me to speak, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to add one last thing, is that generally no one will listen to us if we present ourselves as superior.
Hare Krishna.
If we present ourselves as superior, then nobody wants to hear you, because everyone wants to think that there's something very special. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada said, he talks about Lord Chaitanya, you tell the person that, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so intelligent, you're so spiritual, but I simply ask you to forget all of that and just try to understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So we have to present ourselves as submissively appreciating where people are, and then suggest things in such a way that they can, if they so choose, accept it. But that's you know, that's an individual situation. But you can't talk to a person really unless you're their friend. And if they don't think you're your friend, then there's not much of a chance to listen to them. And then that increases our understanding that, you know, we have to be kind to the devotees and, you know, prema maitri kripo peksha. We have to love Krishna. We have to be maitri, friends with all the devotees. Kripa, merciful to the innocent, and upeksha, avoid the demons. So this kripa, we should try to learn how to apply the kripa to other persons by not thinking ourselves superior and not considering that we know everything. Even if we have access to everything, it doesn't mean that we know it. And other people in other religions may have a deeper grasp than we do ourselves. They're performing more austerities, just like the Muslims are celebrating their Ramadan. So it's in the Vedas. It's in the Vedas. If you eat meat, then you should fast for a month. And if you don't, then you can fast the 2 days of Ekadasi, and then fasting is another thing. But yeah, so they're performing their austerities. Some of them are doing so very sincerely. So we should have some appreciation. And the Christians are doing their Lent like that. I was in the Catholic Church and put the dirt, the ash on the forehead and says, "Remember, man, that thou art dust, and into dust thou shalt return." So that's important. Of course, the body does, but not ourselves. We have friends. We have to understand we're against all the materialist, atheistic people. But anybody who really believes in God, or even basically in the lowest stand believes in God, then they're our friends. We have to see them that way. And then try to make that friendship something that we can depend on when the going gets tough. Okay, Bruce, I've gone on too long.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much again for allowing me.
Thank you so much,
people.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
And,
We can thank you enough. Dear devotees,
Yeah, Grace, it's okay. It's okay, please.
okay. All right. Dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves. And we all, with one love, one heart, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker, our beloved uncle, great uncle to some of us, His Grace MEDHAVI Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us as he usually does today. Please, you may all unmute. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Rama Rama, Hare
Pancha Karpa Tarubhyascha Kripa
Hare.
Sindhubhyascha Anam Prabhashnebhyo Vaishnavedebhyo Namo.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda.
His Grace MEDHAVI Prabhu ki. Yeah. This come from the Charya, is Divine Grace Labai Charana Vrindesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Our glory is to assemble devotees. Hare.
Hare.